My name's Dean, and I'm your host. You're listening to The Non-Typical Project. Episode 1 of The Non-Typical Project. I've got Hunter Hogan here with me. He's one of my good friends. Nobody else I wanted to pick for episode 1. He is a certified public land killer. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. He is probably all over a lot of your guys' social media feeds. He's been having a heck of a year this year, and he's known for killing big bucks consistently on public land. And part of the reason that he's on for episode 1 is because he's one of my closest friends. He's kind of known about this being in the works in the background for probably like 2 years. I've been talking about starting this or doing some kind of podcast. So excited to actually get it underway. Non-typical is going to be all about talking to non-typical hunters, their non-typical strategies, who they are, how they got to where they are, and what they do. So it's going to be kind of a free-flowing conversation. Maybe you guys get some tips, tricks, and tactics out of it. Maybe not. We're just going to have a good time and talk to a lot of people and see what makes them who they are. So that being said, even though Hunter's one of my close friends, I actually don't know this story. I don't know how you started out hunting and how you got kind of kicked off into the, that space of like, taking your first deer. Did you start off with a rifle? Did you start off with a bow? How did bow hunting and archery come into all of it? And kind of how'd you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I started with just going and hunting with my dad from like earlier than I can even remember. He was like carrying me up in the stand with him and I'd sit on the platform between his legs and like bow hunt. So it was something I just grew up doing. Then I got into like competitive archery and then got into the filming and then got into the public land, and it's just been like a progressive, I guess, taking on challenges as they come has kind of been my progress of that. But yeah, I think I shot my first deer when I was 6 with a rifle, and then by age, I wanna say 11 or 12, I was bow hunting. Shot my first deer with a bow and started bow hunting a lot with my dad and stuff. So, um, yeah, it's kinda been something I've always been around, always been into, and learned from him. So
Right on. Like, so for me, I'm kind of in the same boat. So I took my first deer when I was 6 with a rifle on some public in northern Missouri, and then my first deer with a bow when I was 8. So like I just kind of been around it. I think that first deer with a bow, I think I missed it 2 or 3 times. It was a yearling doe, and I completely whiffed the shot on the first 2, and then finally got a shot like that actually connected on her and watched her drop right after that. So that kind of moment for me was like, okay, bow hunting thing's a little bit different. And I kind of started gearing myself more towards that. Like I found myself from a young age being more excited about bow hunting than I was about getting out with my rifle. Because the rifle was something that like I never missed. When I was a younger kid, I never missed a deer with a rifle. But with a bow, my first time out, I did. Was there a point, like, when you were learning how to bow hunt or starting to bow hunt where you were like, "I'm not doing the rifle thing anymore?" Or was that kind of like a slow phase out just because archery season afforded you more time in the woods?
I was more of a, I don't know, I'd like me and dad spent so much time bow hunting that, like, yeah, we dabbled with rifles some, but it was like such a short one weekend type of thing that it was like nothing compared to all the months of bow season that we had. So I've just never really thought much of rifle season as being my thing. And I think the last deer I shot with a rifle, I was 16 or 17 in high school. So it's been 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, probably. I just turned 28. So yeah, I've just never really desired to do much rifle hunting personally. I don't, it's not that I'm against it or anything. I enjoy the bow hunting, and then, yeah, progressively taking on more challenges as far as like, I grew up hunting like small parcels of private land, and I got frustrated with the private land stuff sometimes on the small parcels because it was like you're hunting the land, you're not hunting the animal or the deer. And so I really enjoy like going out west and stuff to where there's like tens of thousands of acres that are accessible. And then you're really hunting the animal at that point, and once you find an animal and you kinda have, like, the landscape and freedom to pattern and chase them, that's what I've really got addicted to in recent years, and, it was progressive from, like, rifle kill, then bow kill, then a buck with a bow, and then, public land and the challenge of that, and then mobile hunting, and then, killed a couple public land bucks. Well, now I wanna shoot, like, age class on public, and then I wanna tackle, like, out of state hunts, and then, like, only, like, really old age class deer even on the out of state hunts and filling multiple tags a year. It's like I've just added challenges on as I've progressed, and I don't know, I think that's the cool thing about whitetails. There's always a new challenge you can try to conquer, and some people like to plateau out at a certain point, and some people like to keep on taking the challenges, so that's just been the fun part of it for me.
Was there kinda like, a point for you where you noticed yourself saying like, "Okay, I'm gonna start taking on these challenges." Was that, like, younger, or is that after a lot of experience? Like, for me, I remember I was probably in, like, middle school or early high school when I kind of evolved from, like, what I talked about before is, like, my dad was a big time spot hunter, like, he likes going out on public and he'd pick a spot, and he was really good at doing that, and he, like, knew kind of these transition zones deer would use. But for me, I got to the point where I was like, "I don't wanna hunt spots, like, I wanna go chase the deer, like, I wanna stay on top of a deer." Was there a point for you where you were like, "I'm gonna make this transition into mobile hunting and transition into, like, I'm gonna start chasing deer. I wanna start going out of state." Like, how did that kind of happen for you, or what was that light switch moment where you were like, "I gotta go do this"? Because 'Cause you're one of the most committed people that I know. Like, you go out no matter what. I think last year you spent something crazy like 27 days or something like that in Kansas.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I think it was 30 total.
yeah, when I see something like that, I'm like, "Dude, like, unreal." To be like, to just say, like, "I'm gonna grind it out, not just in my home state, but I'm gonna go to another state and grind it out like that, no matter the cost." Like, what was that light switch moment where you went from, "I'm not just hunting home state anymore, I'm not just hunting spots, like, I'm gonna mobile hunt and I'm gonna chase down deer, and I'm gonna do it in every state that I can."
Yeah, I mean, like, the real turning point was when I started, like, filming and stuff. I just started taking it more seriously. I started my own business to where I could have more time off work to do it and the funds to do it, and, um, I mean, just literally committed my life to it, and when I did that, I had, like, a whole reorganization of life. Like, I moved, like, to a different part of the state when I was, I think, like, 20, and then, new area, like, not many friends working. I was working, like, commercial construction where you'd start anywhere from 5 to 7 AM, and you'd usually be off work at 3, and so you got, like, 5 hours of daylight in the summertime to, like, spend doing stuff, and I'm not really the type to go out and party and do all that stuff, so I was like, "I'm just gonna go spend time with deer," and so that's what I did over the summers and stuff, and yeah, I became obsessed with it. It was a lot of fun, but, like, the turning point was really for when I started filming and stuff and started, like, trying to make content, and then, you know, I started to do research on the industry side of things as far as, like, the people filming their hunts and putting content out there and stuff. And I really wanted to hold myself to the higher standard of the industry. And there's a select few people who are like really chasing mature whitetail and committing their life to it and killing like big deer or high age class deer or public land killers. Like there's only so many guys that are doing all of those factors, and I really wanted to pursue that level of whitetail hunting and take on that challenge, so that was really the turning point of, like, trying to take it to the highest level I possibly could.
Yeah. Well, and I've gotten to, firsthand see you take to that level. And I credit you in a lot of ways to the way that I hunt. And, I like to say that, like, my hunting is an adaptation of, like, all the people that I've hunted with. Like, I definitely take things still and draw on stuff that I learned with my dad when I was a kid. And then when I was doing it my own way and chasing after deer, kind of those hard lessons learned along the way of like, man, I really screwed up on what could have been an incredible hunt, or I really screwed up on a world class deer. And then, I got start to refining my own kind of methods and refining the way that I hunt. And then I get, around to meeting you and, Dylan and a couple other guys that I end up going on hunts with. And I kind of was able to pick up on a few things and be like, okay, this is a great idea. Or like, this is putting a piece to the puzzle that I haven't collected yet that I can
Yeah,
put into my own game.
right.
So, I look back on a lot of those hunts a lot from when I was less experienced, and I'm like, dude, if I would have actually known what I know now, it would be a completely different story. And I have some that just stick with me that I think about every season. Every time it gets to like late season in Missouri, I get to thinking about, probably one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen on hoof, just making a like stupid, miscalculated decision that put me within 9 yards of a deer that I couldn't take a shot at.
Mhm.
Are there any deer or, like, any stories or any, like, hunts that you look back on, like, "If I knew what I know now, this would have been, potentially my biggest buck to date," or do you have any of those bucks that you think about that are like, "That's the one that got away. Like, that's the one that I didn't get to capitalize on."
Yeah, that's something I've been, like, really figuring out and playing with in the last 3 years especially because, like, I've just gotten to know a lot of deer. I've always told some of my closest hunting buddies like Dylan and Jeff and yourself, like, I like to spend time with deer. I like to spend time around mature bucks and, being successful at the bow hunting side is just a byproduct of that. But I really like studying them. So I've got to know a lot of different bucks, a lot of different deer, and they're just all their personalities are so different and then you go to a different state and the animals might act differently even if they're the same species and stuff. So I've really started like picking and choosing my chess matches because there's certain bucks that you can watch a couple times and read them and the time that they spend on their feet and the way they react to people or pressure or movement in the daylight or whether they're a nomadic deer or a homebody deer or just kind of a sporadic movement deer. Like there's so many different personalities that I've really tried to start picking and choosing my chess matches. And my favorite is to take on that ultimate challenge of the hardest chess match, the hardest deer to find, the one that doesn't daylight, the one you've only seen one time ever or two times a year, even though you're spending 100 days out looking for them. And it's like, I enjoy those chess matches the most, but at the same time, I'm trying to balance this deal of like doing videos and making content, but also still killing a big mature buck. And so it's like some bucks are big and mature, and it's still going to be a hard game, but there's just some that are harder than others. And I really like those hardest games, but I just try to balance that. I try to do what I enjoy a little bit, and then I also try to like balance that you know, be successful, fill a tag and do it in multiple states and make some stories, make some memories, kill some bucks and have some success. So that's kind of a thing I've been trying to balance the last couple years. And last year when I spent 30 days in Kansas, it's like I spent that because there's a deer there I was 100% positive was probably the biggest deer I'll ever have the opportunity to hunt and I spent that many days chasing them, and I passed up going after a lot of deer that were bigger than anything I've even ever killed before. But I really wanted to like engage in that game and try to like figure that deer out that was disappearing. And the same with Missouri last year. I didn't fill a tag in Missouri last year, but I spent, you know, 20 some 30 days, pursuing one specific buck that was really hard to kill. And he was staying in standing corn that never got cut. And so it's like I don't know, those challenges are the most fun to me, whereas, like, this year, I was like, "I'm gonna kill the first big mature buck that's, 5 plus years old on the state that I go to," if he's over 5 and he's over 150, I'm gonna kill him if I can get it self-filmed. I was also self-filming this year, and so I did that, and I've filled 3 tags, and my goal is to fill 5 tags this year, and I still killed, like, one of the big target bucks I was after, And then, the other 2 bucks that I've killed this year weren't my main target buck, and they weren't, like, the biggest deer, the hardest deer to hunt, but they were really nice mature deer that I ended up killing and getting good footage of and making an awesome story out of. So, that's just been something I've been trying to balance on that whole deal and really, like, pick and choose what challenges I wanna take on and kinda the success rate that you might have on each of those.
So, and I want to get to some of your out of state stuff too, because that's like a new concept to me still and still something I'm learning a lot about. But one of the things you mentioned is like last year you didn't get to fill your Missouri tag. And so when I sit there and I hear about like you chasing deer, like I've done it myself too, where I've chased a deer and just not filled a tag that year because I had the objective of going after just the same deer every single time I'm in the woods. Do you think that when somebody commits that much of their season or that much of their time, or at least in your opinion, to one deer and they end up kind of sacrificing their season and maybe unsuccessfully to chasing that one deer, do you think that the benefits outweigh the negatives of sacrificing a season over one deer? Like, do you think that you learn more and sharpen yourself more as a hunter chasing one deer for that long? Or do you think that you're kind of sacrificing the opportunities you have to learn other deer? Because one thing for me, after, making that mistake before, like this season, I went into this season telling myself over the summer that I need to find 5 shooters no matter what. I need to find 5 shooters. And then that way I have a plan A, B, C, D, and, just go down the list if things aren't working out for me. And that ended up being a successful tactic for me, but, would you commit another full season to a deer? Probably, granted, if he's big enough. But, for guys that maybe have limited time out to hunt, do you think they're sacrificing too much? Or do you think that that's something that, the cons might outweigh the benefit of just giving your all to one single deer?
I really think it boils down to each person and where they're at on their journey of bow hunting, and I there's a lot of discrepancy on, like, how bow hunting should be approached, and it's like, if you're hunting public land, should you be looking for a mature deer? Should you shoot, something that makes you happy or, should you only shoot 1 buck per season, or should you do this? Should you do that? And it's like all these people have opinions, but my personal opinion on the whole deal is that I think each person should set an objective, a goal for their season and be like, this is what I want to accomplish. And I think that if you make that goal or objective like a little more challenging than what you've accomplished before, then you're going to obviously learn something in the process. And my personal favorite thing to do is chase the hardest deer that has the most complex personality that I've seen in a whitetail. And I want to, like, if I wasn't filming, if I wasn't, making stories and doing, multiple states and stuff, I would personally try to choose the most complex deer to figure out, and I would spend my whole season pursuing that deer if it took the full season. Now, it might take 3 days, it might take the whole year and I eat a tag, but that would be the challenge I personally would want to take on and would be the most fulfilling to me if it all came together, and honestly, the most fulfilling even if I didn't fill the tag. So that's my personal, like, favorite thing to do and my personal favorite objective to set for myself, and so, I don't know, like I said, I like to bow hunt for the challenges and stuff, and as long as you're setting an objective and it's challenging for yourself, I think you're gonna learn along the way. Now, do I recommend everybody chases the hardest deer to tackle or tries to shoot something 5 plus years old on a heavy pressure state or anything? Like, no, you don't have to do that. That's just something that I enjoy doing personally.
So when you're chasing after a deer with like different personalities, kind of like how you mentioned, like those mature bucks, that's a different animal entirely. It's different than just going out and hunting whitetail, like hunting a mature buck. If anybody's been around one or experienced it before, especially on public, it's like hunting a completely different animal. When you're chasing after a mature buck and you're learning about all their personalities, one thing that I find interesting is, do you think that the personality of different bucks and whether they're homebodied or nomadic or, their kind of tendencies of what they like to stick around and what they do. Is that something you think that those deer, when they get to a certain age class, they're just conditioned to behave a certain way to live that long? Or do you think that some of these deer are just like that from the beginning? Like, have you been able to follow a deer from when he's maybe 3.5 to when he's 6.5 and say, oh no, he's always been this way? Or have you seen their personality develop over a couple years and say, oh no, this mature buck was conditioned to be this way through living on public land or anything else?
Yeah, I think some of it is environmental, but I don't know. There's a there's a lot that goes into that. I think, I have watched a few deer go from, that 2, 3-year-old stage to 5 plus, and I know of one deer specifically that I've watched from 3 years old to 7 years old, and so it's like, that deer has been pretty much the same his whole life, and I think he found a system that worked really good and stuck with it, and I think that some of it I think it's some of both. I think they learn sometimes. Some bucks get, like, more pressured or shot or pursued more or just have more contact with people and learn how to work around people more efficiently. And then I think there's some bucks that just happen to have a system that worked really good from a young age and just continue to do that system until they get into the older age class. But what I do see develop amongst a mature deer is like as they get older, they become less like frantic, like they don't travel as much, they don't move as much, they don't travel as far in the rut. Oftentimes, like, they're a lot more decisive with each move that they make, and they're more consistent with the things that they're choosing to do is something that I do see in every one that goes from, like, a young age to old age. But I don't know, as far as personality, I see a lot of them like, just stick to whatever personality they are, and I'm not sure that that necessarily changes over time. I think they just adapt to their environment as they go. So it's like if they don't adapt or if they don't have a system that works, if they're on public land, they're gonna die. So it's like that's really the only way to for that to happen. It's like they either die or their system works. So it's one or the
Yeah.
other. And maybe on private land it's different because they're safe, or maybe it's like a managed place to where they don't have to adapt or they don't have to be smart or they don't have to do this, that, or the other for their system to work and they're still safe because they're managing them to an upper age class. But you don't have that option on public. It's like somebody will shoot that deer. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna happen unless they have some very slick system that to where they're avoiding people. And a lot of times they're a lot closer to people than people realize. Like I've killed a lot of deer less than 100 yards from a parking lot, and you came with me this year and filmed the hunt in Missouri, and we were what, like, it had to be less than 100 yards from where we parked.
Yeah. Yeah. It was not far at all. I think our
Yeah,
walk in time total, like our time to get to the tree was less than 5 minutes of walking.
yeah, right. So, and I was on like a heavy pressured area. It's just like sometimes deer have a system to where it's all about not being bothered. It's not about how far away from people they are. It's the fact that people aren't stepping on top of them. So, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just one of those deals on and I just don't have I only have experience on public land, and so that's my perception of a mature deer and how he develops. His system works or he dies, and it's one or the other. And so I don't know, maybe if I like had more data on like a something that's privately managed or something like that, then maybe they develop over time and their personality changes, or maybe the environment is a different effect on them. But in my world, it's one or the other. It's a system that works from the get go, or it's a system that gets them killed. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're spot on from my experiences too, and I mean, like, in Missouri, public land can get pretty hammered, and if you're a 2.5-year-old with a bad system, dude, it's lights out. Like, you're in trouble. And,
yeah, and
with
it's
from
like that
hunting
in
with
a
you.
lot of states.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, 2.5-year-old bucks are just they're on the hit list. I mean, it is what it is. And, you know, one of the things, like you mentioned, being close to the parking lot there, yeah, that buck that, you know, I filmed with you in October, he was like that, and then I can call back to our rut hunt that we did. I guess it would have been almost 2 years ago now or something. That buck wasn't terribly far off either. You know, you've really keyed in on, you know, some of those areas that aren't, you know, because I used to be the guy that was like, "I'm gonna hoof it 3.5 miles back here," and it is December and, like, in the negatives, and I'm sweating, like, I'm dripping sweat, like I'm gonna freeze to the tree,
Yeah,
because I decided to hike out 3.5 miles and, like, nobody's ever been here, and you look
right.
up and there's a tree stand on that tree. Somebody
Yeah.
lugged a two-man ladder stand up there. So that's when, like, when I started hunting with you like that, my perspective definitely changed, like, it's not about hiking out there as much as it is finding something that other people just aren't noticing or something that isn't getting foot traffic.
Yeah, this whole idea of nobody else will go to that effort does no.
Yeah, no.
It's it's a great theory, but it's just not true. There's so many people that will do that. There's
Yeah,
and, like, I've hunted, man, out west, there's places you can just go miles or say, like, elk hunting and stuff, it's like you pack a you pack a camp on your back and you just hike and hike and hike and hike and hike and go farther and farther and farther in, and it's like you cannot get away from people. If you're on public land and it's hunting season, there is no getting away from people, and so it's like and the deer are the same way, like, the deer there's no getting away from people, there's only working around them, and so they
yeah,
gotta have, like, a system that works for that, so yeah, cracking that code is the funnest part to me, and that's why I like spending time with deer in the off season so much. In the spring and the summer, it's like when there's nobody else out there and you get to watch them do their system and they're a little more chilled out and not pressured on that, and they're pounding the protein because they're growing antlers and there's 15 hours of daylight in the day, and it's like that that time of year is really fun for me to learn what their system is and figure out how all that works because it's just like this perfect storm of everything coming together, and you don't have to deal with the drama of other people being around. I mean, sometimes there's people out scouting, but not like hunting season, you know what I mean?
no, no, I've definitely seen that myself too, like, there have been areas where I could swear, like, "Man, I must have found a gold mine here," you know, because 'cause I'm scouting it even in July, like, even when we're getting close to deer season, July and August, and I'm not seeing other people even out scouting. But dude, September 15th rolls around and that parking lot's full. I mean, like,
Yeah,
you better park up the street. It's like trying to get into like the hot spot in town or the new restaurant. It's like everybody's there. So
right,
there's definitely that separation. And I think a big part of, you know, my success this year was the fact that I put in that much time over the summer because when those guys weren't there, I was, and I was putting the time in, glassing and hoofing it through that area, and I had the formula together and I was able to get it done, you know, those first 2 weeks of season, and then I'm
right,
tapped out in Missouri until my second tag comes in. I think that that little bit of separation, that little bit of extra homework, and getting to watch those deer in a consistent pattern opens up your eyes to, like, what the area is actually capable of too.
right. Yeah.
So, when you're going out and you're, because I wanna touch back on the out of state thing. What was the first state you went to on your first out of state hunt? Was that successful or not successful? And kind of how did you get this plan together to go? Were you already self employed? How were you kind of juggling this idea of, you know what, I'm going to tackle my first out of state hunt? Because I'm looking to hopefully do that this upcoming season. I know a lot of other people might be looking to go out of state for the first time. How did you kind of figure everything out and get your plan together?
Man, that's been a learning process. It's like I think the first state I ever went to was Illinois, and I was like, "There's big deer in that state. It's in the heart of the Midwest. It's nice and close to me." And then I pull up and there's like 25 people from Alabama there. I was like, "Holy smokes?" Yeah, that was a learning experience. I think that was the first state I went to. I did get into some big bucks. I didn't fill a tag there that year. And then that same year, I went to Nebraska with our buddy Alex, and we went mule deer hunting. And I had mule deer hunted before. I guess I should say Illinois was my first whitetail out of state. I had killed a mule deer with my friend Tyler Babbitt in Kansas before, but that was kind of a deal. Like he invited me out there, I invited him to Missouri. We kind of like traded hunts, if you will. It's like here's where I hunt. Here's some big bucks to hunt, and then we went to Kansas, and he was like, "This is where I hunt. Here's some big bucks to hunt." Respect each other's areas from here forward, but like it was cool to go experience that. And I ended up killing a stud muley. And so I had done some mule deer hunting out of state, but my first whitetail experience was Illinois. And there's a lot of people that hunt that state. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that hunt Missouri, and there's a lot of people that hunt Illinois. And I killed some big deer in Illinois the following couple years. I had filled, I think 2 out of 3 tags that I bought there on public and some nice deer. I also worked 3 or 4 weeks for them, like hardcore every day type of deal. And as season progressed, more and more people showed up. So after that, I started looking into, states that were less renowned or just trying out different states each year to see what the recipe was for each one, because there's big deer a lot more places than people think, and that's about all I'll say about that. It's not just the popular TV states, like, there's big deer in more places than just Illinois and Iowa, and,
Yeah.
so I just started, like, really diving into the research side of that and started trying some new states. This past year, my top goal is, like, I just want to hunt somewhere I'm not running into people all the time, and I had a couple hunts this year that I ran into a lot of people, and I had a couple hunts this year that I was into big deer with nobody around, and that is really cool. That's something that I cherish because I realize now how special that is. Like, if you're hunting a big deer on public, especially in like November or something, and there's not other guys crowding around you or like 20 other guys around you, you're really into something special and you better cherish that because it's very, very, very rare regardless of the state that you're in. So that's something that I really tried to accomplish this year and had a lot of fun just trying to learn that side of things and going to states that people don't think to hunt. Anyways, yeah, that was kind of my goal this year is just to like try to get away from people. And yeah, it's hard to do. It's another hard challenge of the whole deal, but
Yeah, yeah, I think the hunting around people and the deer working around people, especially in November. November's kind of a crazy time to do it too because, I personally, and you might have a different opinion on me than this, so let me know if you do, but like I personally don't necessarily try to have a target buck in November. I try to put myself around where I think there's rut action and where a buck may come through. Because when I think of November, I think of new bucks showing up on properties I've never seen before, bucks that have been there all year disappearing, and if they catch the tail of a hot doe, they might go 3 counties over. And so I don't necessarily go after a certain buck. I just try to work around the public and work into areas where I think that the does are bedding at and wherever I can find a place where I'm hoping a mature buck will pass through. If you're rut hunting or your kind of experiences in November, are you on the same page there? Do you kind of have a different method? Are you still trying to find one specific buck and figure out where he's going to for the rut?
I just that's so dependent. I feel like it just depends on the year. I guess from the get go, I try to like schedule out timing on tags. So like I know for a fact that if I go to Illinois, Nebraska, Missouri, some of these Midwest states, like last week of October, first week of November, there's gonna be a lot of people. And it's gonna make it really hard because the predictability of even deer movement on public is just changes by the hour, depending on how many
Yeah.
people are there, and you have no control over that. There's no control, there's no prediction on that. Can you get lucky? Yes, but if I'm gonna try and, like, be efficient and fill tags through the year and be, effective with my time, because I don't have unlimited time. Like, I do have limited funds, limited time, other things going on in life and stuff like that. So it's like it's not like I have unlimited time to just try and get lucky. I try to be very efficient and very effective with my time in a state and still accomplish the thing I'm wanting to accomplish. So it's like there's certain states and there's certain tags and there's certain places that I will go or won't go for that specific time of year. So like if I'm gonna try and rut hunt in November, I want to have some sort of tag that has a quota on it. So whether that's like you draw Iowa, okay, you draw Kansas, um, like there's a couple states like I know Illinois had a like special permit tag. So there's like only so many people that can hunt this property and you have to like mail in an application for it. And so it's like something like that, something that has a limit of some sort on the amount of tags. Or like Nebraska now, they do I think it's 3,000 tags and then once they're sold out, they're done. Like that's all the tags that get sold for non-residents. And I haven't hunted Nebraska since they started the quota deal. I've spent a lot of time in Nebraska, but like I'm just saying something like that helps a lot on that side of things. And so that's that's kinda my initial goal for November, and then I try to work off of that, I try to, like, plan accordingly for that state, use, you know, normal rut tactics, and even if there is limited quota on how many people can be there, it doesn't mean it's not gonna be crowded still, it just means there's at least a some sort of cap on the whole deal, and so
This is there can only be 3,000 trucks here. It can't be more than
yes,
that.
yes, yeah,
We're
at
in
least there can't
Missouri.
be
I can
10,000.
swear I've been to a couple areas where, especially when you get to northern Missouri, it feels like you can pull up to a field where there might be 3,000 trucks in that field. Like,
Yeah, it's insane.
for people that like maybe are in a different state or maybe hunt private land or whatever, like it actually will blow your mind when you see like one field and like there isn't many places to go. And it's nothing in Missouri to see like, 10 pumpkins in a patch.
Yeah,
Like, and you're sitting there like they're duck hunting. Like if a
yeah,
deer walks between these five people, are we sure that they're all like mentally sound, that they're not
yeah.
gonna, fire off a shot? It gets pretty wild, especially in November. That seems to be, that just it's that time of year. And that's kind of when that stuff starts to happen.
Yeah, and I have a lot of friends who live out west and stuff, and they're like, "Seriously?" They're like, "It's a 1,000-acre piece and there's like 30, 50 people on there?" I'm like, "Yes." Like, that's literally how bad it is, and it's like you only have so much public land in the Midwest too, and so I don't know, everybody out west is used to units, is used to quotas, is used to points and tag numbers and planning out their tags for each season. Uh, most of that is a mule deer and elk and antelope thing, but there's some of that that goes on for whitetail too. And there's I don't know. I just study regulations and tags and points and all of that stuff, and I try to plan my season for the tags that I have. So I try to have some tags with a quota for that time of year with how much pressure all the public gets. So that's kind of my first deal on that. As far as like a target buck, you know, it I usually try to scout or prepare, or if it's allowed, which a lot of states it's not, but some states you're allowed to run cameras on. I'll go put cameras out, or I'll take a summer scouting trip and I'll do all my homework on a state that I'm going to hunt later in the year and at least get an idea of an area that has big bucks in it, or like this buck was staying here, that buck was staying there. They could be 10 miles away by the time I get there, but at least gives me a starting point, and I definitely keep that, like, in the proper place in my mind, like, just because he was here in July whenever I came and scouted this, like, he could have been killed September 1st, or he coulda get hit by a car, or he could travel 15 miles from his summer range to his rutting range, but, maybe I can at least find an area that has big bucks in it or find some bachelor groups, and it's like, well, hopefully one of them is around here, and just at least do my homework for that and then game plan for, like, natural rut tactics after that, so I don't usually have a target buck for, like, November, but I also cover a lot of ground in the rut. Like, I'm putting together this Kansas episode, and I realized, like, I was doing an interview each morning, and I'm, like, an hour away from where I was last night, and then the next morning, I'm like, I'm an hour and a half away from where I was yesterday, and this is a brand new property, I've never been on it, and then, oh, now I'm 45 minutes from this way, and now I'm in a different unit, and it's like, whenever I'm map studying, there's only so many places that look good to me on maps whenever I filter everything else, so I really try to, like, go to those highlight spots and try to, like, apply my rut tactics during November and just stay super, super mobile and not get too fixated on one area. That's just my approach on it. That's worked well for me.
So you don't worry about like necessarily shooting yourself in the foot or something being like, "Man, I gave this place a day or 2 or whatever and I picked up and moved." Are you, when you make those moves, are you going in that with like 100% confidence of like, "You know what? This is to my knowledge and my homework. This was the most high likelihood area. Nothing came out of it. I'm okay with leaving." Or do you ever kind of like start to second guess yourself on those moves? Or are you totally good with that? Because like for me, I know I want to give an area every benefit of the doubt every time, but when you're out of state, you don't necessarily have that option. So, how
Yeah.
do you kind of balance that mental battle there when you're talking about, just chess game with these deer and you're saying, well, I gave it a day or two and I don't have the time to keep wasting on a bad area. Like, how do you write that
Yeah.
off?
I balance my thoroughness with aggression, and that might make some people mad because but here's the other thing I'll add to that. If there's a truck in the parking lot on an area, I'm not gonna go stomping through it. But if there's nobody else on the area and I'm the first person there or the only person there, or, maybe go to like, if I find another truck or a truck hunting or whatever, I go to a different place. I try to be very careful on not ruining other people's hunts, but I do get ultra aggressive. My first favorite tactic is hanging scouting sets, getting really high in a tree, seeing as much land as I can. And then if it's not the right kind of terrain for that or the right kind of property for that, I'm like big on like very quietly, not still hunting, but the same concept as still hunting, but I'm just scouting, putting some quiet shoes on and sneaking around through an area and just covering ground, looking for sign. And if I'm in the rut, I don't mind bumping deer. Like if I if I bump a big buck and he's rutting and like say he's locked down with a doe, he's worried about that doe or on public land, deer get pushed around. So I'm like ultra, ultra aggressive. Like I do not mind, going through a bedding area and bumping a deer out. And then if I bump him or I in a scouting set and I watch him go into one area, say like this happened in Kansas. Say he comes out of this area and goes into that area. Like the deer I'm thinking of came out of the creek bottom, went into the standing corn. Okay. So as soon as he did that, it's like 9:30 in the morning. I immediately like gather all my stuff up, throw it in my pack, went down into the creek bottom. And I like stomped around everywhere in there. I was like, he's not in here right now. And I'm looking everything over. I'm looking for scrapes. I'm looking for main trails. I'm looking for rubs, just general sign that he's there. I'm looking for maybe a hot doe that's in there or other bucks chasing. And then even after that, I went back to my truck, circled around the standing cornfield, and there's like an island of trees in the middle of the standing corn. And I like sneak in there, and on the edge, there's like four different scrapes along the edge. And then I walk another 20 yards and I jump that buck out of that island of trees bedded down with the doe. And it's like, I don't mind doing that because, like, he's been bumped before. He's in the rut, so he's not just gonna, like, he's only gonna be super strategic for a minimal amount of time, and then he's gonna go back to what's important to him that time of year. And
Yeah.
so it's like, I don't mind getting super aggressive on that kinda stuff, and he was right back in the fields that he was in the day before. The next day he was out there and doing his thing, pushing does around, locking does down, running around, doing scrapes. So I don't know. I balance my thoroughness with aggression, and so it's like if I'm super aggressive on a property and I walk it out or I glass it for a couple days and I'm not finding what I'm looking for, it doesn't mean there's not a buck there, especially in the rut, because they could go lock a doe down for 2 days or go make a big loop and be a traveling buck for a couple days and be gone for 3 or 4 and then show back up. But I try to be thorough with aggression and that saves me a lot of efficiency on time and then go on to the next spot if I'm not finding what I'm looking for.
So that immediate, like, bump in a buck, especially a big one, that's not a, shoulders down, head low sort of moment. That's immediately an opportunity in your eyes to go ahead and just assess the entire area. Because is that like the damage is done, so I might as well take advantage of it and just go ahead and capitalize on what I can figure out from here?
Yeah, and I think it like tells you the most important thing you could ever know about that buck, and that is when he gets bumped, where does he run to? Like wherever he retreats to, that's his safe zone, that's his core area, that's where he knows that he can run to and be safe. And like not that's like his safety net. That's what's got him to the age that he is. So it's like even if I bump him, and maybe I bump him out of the core area or maybe so then I know where his secondary area is. But regardless, wherever they run to, that's like a super important factor to me. And so it's like I just think it teaches you so much. And furthermore, when you bump them and you see where they go, you not only learn that, but now you get to go ahead and do whatever you need to do where he was if you want to try to catch him back in that area, whether that's go ahead and set a stand up to where all you got to do is sneak in or like scout around for sign and look for a scrape line or if you can hang cameras, maybe you want to hang a camera there if that's legal in that state. So I don't know. It's just, yeah, bumping a deer is very exciting and a very strategic thing that I do pretty often. And like I said, I try not to ruin it for other people. I try not to push deer off the public, obviously. That would be shooting myself and everybody else in the foot. But I do not mind bumping deer around in the rut.
Gotcha. So when and I love that because that's a pretty key point that you mentioned there too. Like when you bump a deer, having that kind of mindset about you to not immediately like kind of panic, but to look at it and assess it and be like, okay, where is he going? What did I learn from this? Where does he feel safe at? Okay, he clearly felt safe here if he was bedded, when I bumped him. But where's that secondary area at? Because not just being able to figure out a buck's primary bedding, but being able to figure out his secondary betting too, you pretty much have 90% of the puzzle together in my mind when I think about trying to kill a mature buck. If you know where zone one and zone two are and you can figure out his routes between the two, you pretty much got him dead to rights at that point, if you're able to capitalize on a good move on him.
Yeah.
Uh
Depends on time of year and what your tactic is, but yeah, I mean you get a lot of the puzzle out of that.
Yeah. So kind of back on that out of state thing, when you're, kind of breaking down a state or you're looking into new areas, and you can apply this to at home too. But, I like using the reference of out of state because it gives you kind of a fresh mindset. And let's say it's somewhere you're never gone before. How much time are you looking to dedicate into scouting during the summer to figure out that state or figure out your areas you want to go to? And then what does that look like if you're going in for a week? If you're taking a week to go to that state and you want to capitalize on it, how much time is spent scouting in the summer, and what are you doing once you get there in season?
Yeah. I guess I'll just go over like my process of a new state. One, it starts with like literally days and weeks and months of map studies. And I talked to Austin about this the other day because I feel like we I feel like when we say map studies, it's easy to have like a different perception than what we really mean on map studies. Like when I say map study, I don't mean just like look at the property lines and study it on Onyx. I'm saying like I'm studying like roadways, I'm studying waterways, I'm studying like big blocks of timber versus small fingers of timber. I'm looking at topography, I'm looking at access points, I'm like tracing roads around the area, I'm assessing properties all across the state or all across the units that I can hunt. I'm looking up new properties versus old properties versus reputation, because reputation a lot of times will explain how much pressure an area is going to get. Um, I'm studying, like, I probably have 7 or 8 different apps that I use. And the reason for that is because, like, some of them have like different time of year maps for that. And so it's like sometimes I'm using Find My iPhone or Apple Maps or Google Earth or Onyx or Spartan Forge or CalTopo or all these different apps just to find the right time of year for that state or that area, and like the most updated or the most late season map to where I can find some trails. And it's like, when I say map study, I mean like really, really, really in depth, like Federal Bureau of Deer Investigation. It's serious.
Dude, and I want to capitalize on that because you, and I mean this with my whole heart, are a freak when it comes to this. Like it is,
Yeah.
I've gotten to sit there and watch you sit on your couch and like open up 8 different apps to zoom in on the same, not property, but just a certain section of the property and see
Yeah.
it in different times of year, different years, what it looked like, 5 years ago. And I've watched you like actually break it down. And one of the like shining examples of this for me was I was telling you about a new property I wanted to go hunt. And, I sent you a pin and you looked it over and you said that you were going to like, kind of go through it or whatever. And you sent me a line, a red line, just kind of drawn on it. And you said somewhere in here, go check that out. And you completely fibbed to me. You were like, oh yeah, like I've hunted that property before. You're like, you want to go check this out. So I went there and I went to that line thinking that you'd hunted there before. And sure enough, there was a buck bedded with a doe, and I mean exactly on that line. Like you had drawn it up, and then like I text you that, and you're like, "I've never been there before." I was just messing with you, but you broke down the property just in that amount of time, and you found an area, and sure enough, it was a high probability area where there ended up being a buck bedded with a doe right there. So when you're going through that many apps and you're going through that much time breaking down, what's the first thing you're looking for? Is it a topographical feature that actually like catches your eye above other things? Or are you just looking for the layout of the property? What are those like key indicators that you're like, I'm gonna draw a line here and this is
Yeah.
one of the areas I want to go check out?
Yeah. It's just, I mean, the main objective is how do the deer use this? Like, not how do the deer use this property? How do the deer use this whole general area? Public, private, property lines, creek bottoms, lake, woods, CRP, open field, crops, whatever it is, like how are the deer using this? What looks like the safest area for them to stay? Like what areas can I find main trails, right? Or what areas can I find like high stem count stuff, whether that's like cedar trees or reeds or like briar bushes or, like plum thickets or CRP or whatever, like high stem count that like is going to hold deer to where they feel safe, whether that's on the public or on the private or a mile and a half away from the public. And then maybe there's a food source like close to the public. And then I'm like, okay, scratch that. I'm not even going to go to that property because they have better habitat right here beside them, or whatever. Just like making hypothesis and predictions in my mind of like how the deer use this, how they travel it, how they're going to stay safe, whether it's set up to where a buck can survive to an older age class. And so like I'm making all these predictions in my mind, and they're not always right, but like at least I have a hypothesis for when I do go scout it over a summer. And this goes back to your question that you asked me, like on time spent. So I spend tons of time map studying and making a prediction of how the deer use that area, not just the property, but that area. And then also trying to figure out which properties look the best based on all of those factors. And then I make a list of like properties that I want to go check out. I make a list of like spots on that property that I want to lay eyes on and see if my hypothesis is right. And then, like, once I pick a property, I'm like, "I'm excited about this property. I wanna go check it out." I'm, like, tracing all the roads and looking up all the, like, government maps of, like, where all my access points are, where my parking lots are, and knowing, like, maybe looking into, like, the private lands around it to see if it's, like, a corporation owns this or somebody that hunts owns this, or maybe there's a box blind that I can see on the map or whatever, and just really familiarizing myself with the property before I ever show up. So when I show up, I'm like, "This is where I need to go. This is where I need to go. This is where I need to be." And when I take a trip to a new state over a summertime or even a state I'm familiar with, I try to spend 2 to 3 red moon nights, like primo overhead 2 hours before dark moon, and those are the days that I go there and I try to, like, follow up on all my predictions and see if I can lay eyes on a big buck.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought the red moon up, and that's something that I didn't really start paying attention to until this year. And actually, the first 2 weeks of season, I was like in the gutter. I was completely frustrated. The bucks, one of the main bucks that I was after, I just could not catch him in daylight. I couldn't lay eyes on him. I thought I had him pretty well mapped out, and I just could not get on top of this deer. And I ended up kind of, thankfully, because I had multiple bucks found, I'm like, I'm gonna pitch him to the side. I'm gonna go after this other buck that I found. And I had seen him once in a rainstorm, and then I was making a plan on how to get onto him for the next week. And I was still hung up on how poorly that first buck I was going after went. And I actually remember texting you about it, and you were like, let's just not lose our minds before the red moon. And it was actually the second day of the red moon that I killed my buck that I was after.
Yeah.
So when did that kind of start? Like, when did you say there's something to this red moon thing? And what's your experience with that? Just kind of as a overarching theme for you, like how big is that a factor? And do you actually try to plan your out of state hunts for red moon days?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, not always on I mean, yes, I would prefer to hunt on a red moon, but there's other, like I feel like these last couple years, especially bouncing ideas off of other guys that, really study the moon. And it's like, I at least know what to expect out of each phase whenever I'm out of state. I don't know. It's not 100%, but it is the biggest factor that I've ever seen for some sort of consistency for a mature buck movement. And like I said, it's not 100%, but every person that I know that spends all year round around big whitetail bucks. Like I spend from January to December around mature whitetail bucks because it's what I love to do. Anybody that does that that I know personally is familiar with and like not necessarily believes in, but like uses the red moon or the moon phases as a tool. And so it's like Lee Lakowski, Jake Petro, and my buddy Tony. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I think his Instagram handle is like Tony VA. But like that dude spends every breathing moment he possibly can with hill country deer, which is cool to me because like I'm intimidated by hill country. And it's like I think it's one of the hardest ways to kill a big mature buck. But like he is absolutely obsessed with it and spends any day he has off work in the woods with them, and he's like, "Red moon, red moon, red moon." And it's like anybody who really studies deer and spends a lot of time around them is familiar with, like, how the moon affects their movement. And so, yeah, I plan my trips around it, and it's like you've got an overhead red moon, which is really good, underfoot is pretty good. A full moon is usually good movement, but only for, like, a few days, and then, like, I will no longer go out of state on a new moon, period. It is the worst moon phase, it is the worst movement ever. You think that your cameras are dead because there's no movement, and it's like I talk to my buddy Jake about this all the time. He is like, "Dude, it's just so bad," and him and his dad run a guide service in Kansas, and he is like I mean, they try to schedule, like, hunts around it with their guys and stuff. It's like trying to get guys to have a successful hunt on a new moon is just tough, you know? And I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. I don't know what makes it happen. Tony was saying something about like it creates this miniature high pressure system on stuff. I don't know, you might have to have him on and ask him about that, but, like, it definitely affects deer movement. I definitely plan my hunts around it. I was pretty suspicious of it at first, but now I've spent 6 years doing it, and I'm very confident in how it affects the deer and how to make those predictions and use it as a tool to kill mature bucks, and so, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because when you kind of were explaining it to me at first and trying to get me to pay attention to it at first, and I'm usually pretty stubborn on some of that new stuff, and I usually have to beat it into my head a few times. But like when I started looking at it, I actually, as soon as I reflected on it, I tried to go back because it's pretty cool. It's I believe the app is a Moon Guide, right?
Yeah,
That app, you have historical data too. So I was actually able to go back and look at the deer that I've taken before, and my biggest deer that I've taken have been on red moon nights, and I just didn't even know it. And this year I got to watch it play a hand, or at least it seemingly so. I took my buck on a red moon day, and then I actually ended up taking a better look at all of it, like, as far as, like, comparing it to my camera data and what my cameras are showing me when I had big bucks showing up and when I didn't, and it's pretty shocking to me, actually, how much it actually ended up lining up pretty often.
yeah.
So that was something totally new to me that I thought was really neat. Man, one of the things that I do wanna hit on with you because, like I said, you're one of the most dedicated people I know at all of this, probably the most dedicated. You consistently get it done. You are on top of the game and you've refined your system so well, which is something that I'm probably going to just have to have you on again sometime to talk about your system because you found a way to just minimalize everything and make everything as compact and slick as possible to get in and out and do the job that you need it to do. But one thing that I always struggle with and that I talk your ears off about is trying to find that balance of like, okay, I want to go out of state, I want to go do these things, but whether it's finances or it's time off work or it's doing whatever, you're in a unique position where you're self-employed and that helps you out a ton on timing. But with that being said, you've got some big changes coming up in life. You're soon to be a father and you've got, some things that you're going to have to navigate there. How do you see that changing your hunting? Do you see it affecting your hunting a lot? How do you see yourself kind of overcoming those time constraints? And do you have like any advice that you would say, like, if you really want to pursue whitetail, if you really want to take deer consistently and hunt mature bucks and you want to travel, what's kind of like your best advice or your best, idea as far as what it is that, folks need to be looking at or doing or considering when they're going after all that? And how are you going to navigate this kind of next phase of life when it comes to, your passion?
Yeah, I felt like I kinda prepared for it this year, and I had a couple different goals this year, um, one of my goals was, like, high efficiency, it was like, 1, I wasn't gonna take on the challenge of the hardest buck in the state, or the hardest buck that I could find. I was gonna kill the first buck over 5 that was, like, 150 plus in each state, and 2 was, like, I'm gonna try and maximize my efficiency. I'm gonna try and, like, plan my scouting trips to where I can go find some target bucks, and then I'm going to, like, figure out, like, moon times around the time of year that I wanna go hunt, and then I'm gonna go, like, really prepare for each thing going into it, and high preparation is what I'm trying to get to. And so, like, I feel like I accomplished that goal really well this year. It's like I went on my first hunt of the year and I hunted, let's see, hunted the first day of season, and then the second day in the afternoon I blew my bow up on a buck. And so we went home like before that day was over. So I was like there a day and a half, and then I rebuilt a bow and I came back, and I think I got there at like 2 in the afternoon and killed my target buck by like 6 in the evening or something like that. So it was like less than 2 full days of hunting total, like as high efficiency as I could possibly do. And like things worked out to where that worked, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not taking credit for a 2-day hunt. I'm just saying, like, I prepared for high efficiency, and it happened to work even higher efficiency than I anticipated. So, like, that worked well. And then, like, in my home state, that's whenever I took my time to really just enjoy my hunt. It was like I passed on a lot of nice deer, a lot of young deer, and just really tried to enjoy my time hunting. I was able to, like, hunt the morning for a couple hours and then, like, still work a couple days a week or, like, work during the rough moon phases. And I think I spent like 20 days just enjoying hunting. And then I, you told me you had already tagged out and you were like, "Hey, I can come film for you this weekend." I was like, "Okay." I've been holding out on this bedding spot where I've killed a couple bucks before. I think it could really pay off. We'll probably go try that since I have a cameraman and like try to make this as efficient as possible. Try to like kill one in the next 2 days because I've spent my time having my fun. Let's really buckle down on the good spots and go kill. And me and you went in, hung our set. 30 minutes later, he stood up and we had him killed. So it was like the first day of really just trying to hone in on efficiency. Like we killed one. And then I went to Kansas, and on day 2, I found a deer that was over 200 inches. And then on day 3, the next morning, I killed the deer that I did, which is a 150-inch deer. Wasn't the big one that I was after, but like I said, I had my fun the year before chasing the giants and the ghosts and the hardest deer, and tried to stick with that. And so I was there for 3 days or 2 days or whatever it was and killed there. And then I went on another hunt after that. Brand new state, never been there before. Third day in, I found a couple bucks that I wanted to kill. And like, I think it was that same afternoon. It was either the afternoon of day 3 or afternoon of day 4. I went in and hung a set 60 yards from a giant deer that my bow and camera were still on the ground, and he ended up, like, walking out of his bed and came right underneath me and worked a scrape, and all I could do was film on my iPhone. I'll probably make a video of that later on, but again, like, should have had a shot opportunity on a deer
Yeah.
within the first 4 days, and I only had a 5-day trip planned for that. So it was, like, super high efficiency was my plan, and I felt like I really capitalized on that very well this year, and so I I ran out of finances this year before I was really wanting to be done hunting and stuff, but I got some good stories, I got some good footage, I filled a few tags, I stuck to my game plan and the high efficiency and stuff like that, and so that's just something that I tried to really test run this year. Not every year is gonna work out like that, but I just think that's something that was, like, the next challenge I wanted to take on was add efficiency to my list of things and list of challenges to accomplish, and I felt like I accomplished that this year.
Yeah, man, I'd say so. It was incredibly cool coming off of my hunt and being able to take a trip up to you and basically just run straight into the tree. And I think which it's awesome that you're mentioning the efficiency thing too, because that hunt was nothing but that. I think
Yeah.
that morning, just during our morning sits, we got into like 2 or 3 different trees. Like we were
Yeah, 3
bouncing
trees
around. Yeah,
and past 3 bucks, I think, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So you were Which that's the thing too, is that you're not even wasting the time or adding fluff to your day if within a few hours you aren't seeing something that, because again, this is an area that you've done your homework on. You knew where your high probability areas were, so you were able to just cut the fluff out and be like, you know what, this couple hours didn't work, move. Couple hours didn't work, move. Okay, make a game plan for the afternoon. Hop up in a tree. 30 minutes later, there's an arrow and a buck, and
yeah,
that's something that throughout this year I've gotten to watch you do, is like you're really all your hunting and all your tags filled. You can boil that down to really a handful of days that you were able to get it all done in.
yeah,
So I guess to those people that are looking to be able to accomplish that, or looking to be able to, make the most out of their out of state trips, or they want to start doing this and balance it with time, would you just boil that down to just doing your homework and doing your due diligence, everything you can, whether it's map studies at home and making the most out of your scouting days, to just basically boil your hunts down to a handful of key days rather than, trying to figure it out in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, just spending time with deer year round. It's like you might have limited time over the season to go hunt, but like uh mo say somebody works a 9 to 5 at home wherever they're at, right? It's like over the summertime when it gets dark at like past 9 p.m., like sunsets 9 p.m., and if you're getting off work at 5, take a couple days a week to, go spend time with deer for those last few hours. Even if it's an hour drive to a good piece or to public or whatever, it's like you get off, try to plan ahead on it, a good red moon day, couple days that week, and you did it this year. You drove
Yeah. Yeah, I
like
spent time with
over.
whitetails and mosquitoes and gnats. Yeah, dude.
Well, I'm saying, like, you didn't really have anywhere super close to you to
No,
go.
no,
Like, you
no.
did, but, like, you traveled a pretty good ways during the summer, but, like, you get off work at 4 or 5 p.m., even if it's an hour drive, that gives you 3 hours with the deer, and it's like.
Yeah, and I've noticed in the summertime, if you're out there that really those deer it's hot, like, especially in Missouri, like, we had a hot summer, those deer weren't really on their feet and filtering out to feed to where I was able to glass them or do whatever I needed to do until really that, like, last hour or so. So if you're able to travel and get there even for that last hour of light, you're still doing good. You're still able to collect information off of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just spend time with deer and you figure out, like, how they work, how they move, where they bed, and, like, I'm not recommending for everybody to hang in 3 different trees in one morning. Like, I do it a lot, but I knew those deer really well. I spent a lot of time with them. It was my home state. I know those deer. I know how they work, and so, like, there was times I was hanging a set literally to see if the deer were out in the gray light, and then they were, like, moving to transition literally, like, as the gray light was happening. And I'd, like, hang a set for that, and then I'd pull that set, and I'd rotate around to, like, one of their transition areas, and I'd hang a set for the next, 45 minutes of movement or hour of movement. So then I'm, like, an hour into daylight, and then I might pull that set and go hang up over top of a bedding area that they're in, and if I can sneak in, if I have some sort of planned specific access that I know will work, and, like, get into a bedding area with a deer and hang a set, and it's like, "You did that with me," and
Yeah.
that's fun to do. I'm not recommending it to everybody, but if you spend enough time with the deer and you spend enough time with, the property that you're hunting or the area that you're hunting or spend enough summer time there, it's like, you get to know those things and you can kinda get away with that, and furthermore, I'm hanging sets, like, in the summertime, so I'm very comfortable with, like, climbing a tree, and I know my limits of, like, how far I can push in versus how quiet I can be versus, like, how much I can get away with on movement and noise and days and bedding areas and all that stuff. So it's, like, just familiarizing yourself with all of those things allows you to hunt more aggressively and more efficiently.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, you're spot on again, just from what I've gotten to see with you and the hunts that I've been on. I've gotten to experience a lot of that, especially your climbing. You're again one of those guys that, for people that don't know, you're 6'6", right?
Mhm.
Yeah, dude. I'm not a short guy, but when Hunter hangs his sticks, I'm like dangling stick to stick. Like he's able to clear 30, 40 feet in a hurry. So his observation sets look a lot different than mine sometimes, but it definitely gives me a good perspective to work off of, and the efficiency with which you climb, the time you spend with your gear too, is just a big factor. And from what I've seen of you being able to get things done quickly and make those transitions and make those movements to say, I'll hang 3 different trees today because your setup time is really quick. You're able to get set up and hung pretty fast. So
Yeah.
that's a big key that I've seen from you, but we've been on for like an hour 18 already. One thing that I do want to hit on before we go, is there any one thing that you would say that, you know, you hear this, or you hear people say this whenever you're on public, whenever you do talk to people, whenever hunting is a subject? Anything that you hear people say far too often or get obsessed over too much or pay too much attention to where it's just causing them to miss the bigger picture and being successful or being efficient while they're hunting? Is there any one thing that you notice that grinds your gears and you're like, man, you guys are missing the bigger picture here when you keep focusing on this?
Is there something specific that you know I have a pet peeve on before I answer?
No, I'm gonna let you answer first, and then I'm gonna chirp in with a little something that I've seen you express your opinions on before.
Uh, I'd say the number one thing is not like familiarizing themselves with the big picture of the property. It's like they're like, this is a bedding area, and so they treat it as a bedding area, and it's like, okay, well, is it a bedding area? And they like stay in that bedding area and they feed in that bedding area, or are they like transitioning from half a mile away and traveling to that every day? Or like there's just a lot of different concepts. It's like, are they safe on the private and then they're coming through the public or onto the public, or are they staying on the public and then feeding on the private? I don't know, just like big picture of the property would probably be the number one thing, and I know there's a lot of, like, subcategories under that, but, people get fixated on, like, a spot or, like, 20 acres of 2,000 acres, and it's like, "Okay, understand this mile section of where you see this deer." It's like, literally, like, maybe turn your section lines on Onyx. It's a feature that they have, and it's like, look in that mile section of where you found the deer, or where you see him frequent or whatever, and like grasp the whole concept of everything around him, like down to a core. I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't utilize or grasp completely, and it loses them a lot of efficiency and causes a lot of frustration because they're like trying to work off of um, an incomplete amount of information.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people do actually, like, zoom into an area on Onyx and they see the kind of border of that public land and they use it like a bumper, like everything else doesn't
Yeah,
exist. And you know,
right.
they're not coloring outside the lines as much as they should be in that scenario. One of the ones that came to mind immediately when I was asking you this question is something that you've had to like kind of swap me over a few times is I will get really keyed in on if I see a big buck multiple times on camera.
Mm,
And then I'm like trying to establish a pattern for him based off that camera. And
yeah.
I've heard you time and time again be like, dude, just unplug it, turn it off, do whatever you gotta do. Cause I will sit there and I'll try to pattern a deer because, you know, oh man,
Yeah,
I've seen him 3 times on camera this week.
to me personally, like, cameras are a bonus, and it's like, if I set a camera and I get a picture of a buck, I could just pull that camera after that, because that's literally the extent of the data that I use cameras for. If you can get them on there consistently, that's awesome, but even then, you fall into, like, this mindset of that's his pattern, and it's like, that's not always true. He might be doing more, he might be doing less, you don't know. It's just a picture in one spot of what he's doing, and it's like, I know there's people who are great at running cameras. I understand. They're a great tool, but, like, all that I use that data for is to know that a big mature buck exists there. Like, that's it. And that's just my personal opinion on it. I've watched guys who are really good at cameras deceive themselves on what a buck's doing, or where he's at, or how he's using the property. And then I see people that are not very good at cameras get frustrated and not hunt because they don't have a big buck on camera. So there's just a lot of like there's a lot of rabbit holes that are very, very, very hard to avoid with that. So I just feel like you got to use that tool in the proper way and use it for your efficiency and not against your efficiency.
Yeah, it's a tool in the toolbox, but you need the whole
Yeah.
toolbox to build the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on. We've been going for an hour 23. We can about put a bow on it there and have you on again, hopefully sometime soon. If you want to plug YouTube, Instagram, whatever, as far as where everybody can find you at.
Hunter Hogan Productions is a YouTube, and then Bow Life Hogan is my Instagram. That's kind of my main two outlets on that stuff.
Right on. Well, thanks again, buddy. This is a ton of fun, and we'll do it again sometime.
Yep. Thanks, man.
See you, buddy. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Non-Typical Project. If you want to check out our special guest, their social media handles are located in the episode description. If you want to keep up to date with the Non-Typical Project, you can search the Non-Typical Project on Instagram. You can also head over to the main page of the podcast to see all currently available episodes with a new episode every Friday. To keep up to date with me, you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Dean_Hunts. And everything will once again be down below in the episode description. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.